For this evidence, I will be talking about how, on my personal experience, I have observed culture and self awareness on my daily life. But first, what is culture and self awareness? Culture is a shared set of beliefs, norms, symbols, practices, behaviors, and artifacts that characterize a particular group of people. Self awareness within the context of culture entails recognizing and know how our own cultural historic past impacts our values, ideals, and judgments. It additionally extends to being aware of the cultural differences that exist among similar cultural communities. Both of these concepts are relevant on our own personal development and our cross-cultural interactions, since we need to have a very deep level of self-awareness to help us identify cultures and how to treat them correctly, since a bad interaction with someone of a different culture could jeopardize further interactions with people of that community or people that are similar to that community. Reflecting on my personal experiences and observations, globalization has influenced my life in many ways. One example is that I can visit my family from my dad's side regularly. Due to the effects of globalization, because I can take a plane or maybe, take my car with my parents and cross the border really easily, and all that is because, the effects of globalization have impacted how we can travel and visit new places so easily. Also, my own cultural identities have shaped my own understanding of myself in relation to others. One example of this is when talking to my parents or elders. I was taught since I was little that I need to respect my parents and my grandparents and, older people. And even if I don't really know them, it's something that I was taught to do. It was not something, to be questioned about. And I think it's also because, my mom and my dad have always taught me these people have lived way more than what you have lived. So they deserve the respect of, being treated like someone that has, more knowledge, who has been through a lot more stuff than me. And, this could change depending on cultures. For example, maybe in a more culture that has a bigger power distance, cultural dimension could have different ways that they treat elder people or superior people. Another way that I see my culture is through the cultural dimensions, as I already said. We saw this during class, and I see in my culture that we are very collectivistic. One example that I had this morning was that I was working on some physics problems, and a classmate that didn't really understand the lecture asked me if I could explain some of these problems. And I immediately said yes. I didn't think twice about it. And I said that I would help him happily. But maybe in some cultures, it could be considered rude just for him to ask me for help. That could be considered rude in other countries where they don't have this big collectivistic, area as a culture. On the other hand, I have had experiences with foreigners, more specifically with a German girl that was part of an exchange program back in my high school. And we were in the same classroom a whole year. And even though I would try to become friendly and be friends with her, she was really shy and she didn't really want to, socialize with people in the class. And now I know, thanks to the class, that it's due to their individualistic cultures. Germany has, a very big individualistic index. So that changes how they feel. They don't feel that it's necessary for them to join a big group to be part of something, to be happy or stuff like that. And also something that we learned in class was cultural intelligence, which is how easily a person can function effectively in different cultural contexts. Now that we understand what it means, I can see it applied in many situations abroad that I have had. For example, when I went to Japan, I had a hard time understanding why we couldn't talk on the subway. Since here in Mexico, we literally talk everywhere. We talk even places where you're not supposed to talk. For example, in class or maybe in some, jobs where it needs to be silent. So me and my family found it really difficult, to navigate this new area. But we understood that we were outsiders, we understood that we needed to apply the rules to our daily life while we were there. And due to it becoming something so general for 2 weeks, because we were traveling for 2 weeks in Japan, when we came back to Mexico, has become something more normal for us. When we go somewhere new or a new place, like a new country, when we try their public transportation system, we always remain silent because we don't know what their rules are. And we need to see and understand what the rules are so we don't have a problem that we had in Japan. And it's not only because we're trying to not have a problem, but it's also as respect, because now we understand that we need to be careful when we're in new scenarios and new cultural scenarios, so there are no problems. Another concept that we saw during class that I have experienced is transculturalism, which happens due to a coexistence of two or more cultures, that due to the sharing or exchange of cultures, they end up creating a whole new culture. I can see this reflected on my dad's side of the family. They were born in Reynosa, Mexico, which is a border town near the US. And due to the crime and drug trafficking, they had to immigrate to the United States back 40 years ago. And I think McAllen, which is where they live, is the perfect example of this transculturalism, because it has this type of culture is called Tejano culture. They eat a lot of things like fajitas, burritos, and all the things that are not really Mexican, but have that little things that are Mexican, for example, the spices and all of that. And, even though it's not Mexican and it's not American, it's a new culture. And I think, even though it's weird sometimes and it's not Mexican, I think it's a really good dish. And this is a great example of how the combination of cultures can create something really nice and really good. One of the many challenges that we can face when being culturally self-aware is that people may get questions about their own cultural identity, since understanding and experiencing with many cultures can lead to feeling lost and not knowing where we might belong. Still, one of the many opportunities that arise by becoming more culturally self-aware is that you become more effective in communicating with people. And not just people like normal people, people that live near you, it's with people from other cultural contexts. And this can come handy when you're abroad studying or in something else, or it can come handy in other type of things that are more serious. For example, a job interview with a big company that is abroad, or maybe you want to go into an exchange program and you need, a level of English or stuff like that. So it's really important that we have to become self-aware culturally so we can succeed in many ambits of life. In conclusion, globalization affects our daily lives, even if we don't see it so literally. It shapes the way that we communicate and interact with people around the world. Self-awareness is also really important, since we need it to be effective communicators in new cultural situations, so that we can succeed, everywhere. I learned a lot about myself during this project, since I didn't know that I was so multicultural. And I really understand what we saw during class in this first module after doing this project. And I am happy that I know that I can apply it on my daily life and to my experiences. And I really hope that we can keep learning about culture and all the differences and all the cultural contexts.